Hodiak himself. Please welcome David. Charles Manson, Captain Anthony. Please welcome Claire Holtz. Back to the stage, creator and executive producer John McNamara. And last but not least, executive producer Marty Adelstein. So guys, thanks for being here. Season 2 of Aquarius. I'm curious, since this is a 60s period piece, is there something that you guys do to kind of mentally get in the space of these characters before, starting to film this season to kind of transport yourself into this era? David, you're not.
Yeah, well, I remember how old I really am. I'm magically transported to that time. For me, it's honestly, it's that haircut. When I'm sitting in the makeup trailer and Dina Green is creating that thing on the top of my head. Dina Green fans out here. That and the rotary dial phone just put me right back.
What is the secret to your hair? Did you guys have meetings about what Hodiak's...
My personal hair, the secret to
No, the Hodiak haircut.
We had one meeting at your apartment in New York.
Yeah.
And I said, I think some kind of a crew cut.
Yeah.
And 2 nights later, you're on Fallon, and there it was.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
It was similar to
the best makeup and hair test I've ever seen.
Some of what my dad used to wear. Honestly, yeah. I had an old picture of my dad, and it was just something that seemed right to me.
How about any of the other actors? What do you guys do to kind of get in, Michaela?
Hair and makeup and wardrobe. My wardrobe is so spectacular on the show. Amy Stofsky's our incredible designer, and once I put on that whole look, it's like great. Just boom.
Wow.
Yeah. Well.
And look what happened.
Well, Marty and John, let's talk about season 2 a little bit. We saw the first episode here. It premieres tonight. I think you guys are doing something really cool by jumping in time a little bit this year. You're showing the infamous Manson murders. We're seeing those kind of play out. Why did you guys decide to kind of structure the season around using that and kind of show the murders at this point in time?
Well, we had a meeting with the network,
yeah.
and their first thought was, can you just start with the murders and then just move forward? And I said, well, hold on a second, because that skips 18 months of narrative. But I had been thinking and talking to Marty a little bit and David that the one thing about season 1 that I thought there was a grace note I thought we kind of missed, because I'm become a real student of 60s culture. I was before, but now I'm just deeply immersed. And one of the things about the 60s, especially in movies, was everything was deconstructed, almost overnight. Linear storytelling just went out the window. And movies like Petulia and Blow Up come along, and they're told out of order. So after the meeting, I called Marty and I said, I think we need to fracture time and think of the murders like puzzle pieces that are going to then reverberate back to characters we meet. And we're going to see characters who are very different in 68 and then very different in 69. And it just kind of felt right. The minute it sort of hit, it landed, it really felt kind of right. And everybody read the scripts and thought, oh yeah. The word is a little too hard to follow, but I think audiences are so sophisticated and smart. And television really kind of is like movies were in the 60s. It's the place where I think we're experimenting and we're doing a lot of, there's a lot of it, so we can afford to be a little more experimental. So that was my memory of the whole thing.
Yeah, we spoke about a lot of the auteurs from the 70s and that, and how they made their movies, and we're both big fans of that. And we sort of tried to see if we could make that work, and I think it really did work for this season.
And it progressively, that aspect grows and merges more with Hodiak and Schaaf, and you begin to see the same scene you might have seen here from a completely different POV in 5 episodes, and how that affected that character, and then you jump back in time and how is that character inevitably going to get to that place. Because one of the things that in the very first meeting I had with David, we're talking about the theme of the show. I said the theme of the show is the futility of good intentions. And that also is, I think, the theme of the year 1968 when Kennedy and King were both assassinated. I mean, the futility of the good intentions really set the tone for a decade that came apart. So it just sort of, it felt right. It felt like a way to kind of crack the egg.
Gavin, I'm curious, names and figures in 20th century America. What is it like to play this guy? What's your process to kind of get into the mind space of Charles Manson?
Well, it's a challenge, but the great thing about it is especially reflecting on season one, I sort of realized how much of, most actors do. It's about the people you're with and who you're playing off, and the sort of wherever there's charisma or menace or anything, it's kind of created by the people who are acting to me, and the other actors I'm working with, and I sort of like, they do the heavy lifting. Whether it's Amber and Emma and Whitney and Madison, or who's starting the season, or any of the guys really that I'm in season, they're really creating that kind of mystique around me, and my job is just to just know a bit of backstory and deliver the scripts as best I can, and they're wonderful scripts, so that's kind of lucky too. And kind of
Most
enjoy it.
humble actor to ever live. Right here.
It's true.
I will say, forget them, that it's a nearly impossible role to do, right? And he has balls just to say, I'll do it. But beyond that, I think what Gethin has even bigger balls to do is to not do an imitation, to not try to impersonate Charles Manson, but to do an interpretation of the person. Because we're not doing a show about Charles Manson. He's playing a character named Charles Manson. It's based on historical fact, but it's not a documentary, and it's not a docudrama even. So I think it's a brilliant interpretation of this idea of Charles Manson. So, as much as it is the other people in the scene, I think it's Kevin.
Well, season one was very much this great cat and mouse between. Sorry, between. There was a great dynamic between Manson and Kodiak last year. You were chasing him. It was you had a few encounters. It seems in this episode that you guys are really starting further apart than you ever have. What can you say about kind of the Manson and Kodiak kind of chase this year? Are you guys going to be coming back together and coming back apart? Like, what's the...
You guys jam out together. Well, what can we say?
We do kind of a rom-com cute neat. Drop a sandwich. We both bend down the pig and we bump heads.
This isn't a spoiler.
It's one. I think John should answer that. It's one of the difficult things of the show.
Yeah.
Is to, because there isn't any historical fact to. Nobody was investigating Charles Manson before. So they weren't. Oh, if only we'd been a little smarter, we could have stopped that.
Right.
It's not like that. So, John. If you
Well, no, I think the thing structurally that helps a lot that they have in common is they both have great concern for Emma, played by Emma Dumont, the daughter of Grace and that lunatic Randall Byrne. And that's always going to bring them together or connect them in some way, And again, I don't want to deliver a spoiler. I hope this is more of like a trailer, but at one point we're in the writers' room kicking it around as one does, and Alexander Cunningham, who can't be here tonight, but is one of the key creative forces behind the show, said, I don't know how we get there. And I'm not sure anybody's going to like it. But I could write an entire episode of Kodiak and Manson in Kodiak's apartment. And I'm like, I don't give a shit how you do it. Don't say any more, just go write it. And it came back, and it's like a play. I mean, it's really, and I take no credit. All I said was, yeah, that's a good idea. And she and David and Gethin and all the actors really delivered. But it is like, we called it the Playhouse 90 episode. It's a play in which they're in each other's heads.
We call it the show where Gethin and I play guitar together.
Oh, we had
We had a different name for it.
I go to this show, I was really, really nervous.
Yeah.
Well, David and Michaela too, I'm also curious about kind of Hodiak's personal life this season, and especially with Grace. You know, Grace is dealing with a lot of tricky family dynamics right now, but where do you see their relationship kind of going this year?
Well, it's interesting because we drop off at the end of season 1 where Grace she's gonna follow her heart for like the first time in her life. And she's always been caught between these two worlds, these two men, and here she takes this giant leap of faith, a huge gamble, especially at that time when it was so important to be, you know, a good wife and mother. And so what does that mean for her? I was super curious to see what this season was gonna bring, and I think people are gonna like to see where she goes. I think it's a tough road to navigate, especially in that time, but.
Yeah. I think what's really cool about the Grace character going forward is I think she's going to become this really terrific and hard force, you know, and totally unexpected flowering of that personality. So, oh,
No, everything you're saying is exactly what we want to do.
oh.
This is like
That way we can talk about other things at lunch.
I think we see a spark of that for sure in the first season. She's tough. She can hold her own, and you get to see a little more of that.
I think it's interesting that what and I'm only thinking of this now, that what Grace and Claire's character Charmaine have in common is they're emerging from worlds in which they're defined by men. And that, in the 60s, from the research I've done, it was brutally hard. And it was just as hard for a society wife to kick out of that chrysalis as it was for a young female officer. But they're both women of their time who are very strong, and they will not be defined by men. They don't even necessarily feel like they need that much help. And I think that's a fascinating thing to explore. And we've certainly explored it in this season, but I think it's, as we move into 1970 in season 3, that's when the women's liberation movement and Bella Abzug and Gloria Steinem, that's exploded. And that's going to have a huge effect on our show.
Well, Claire, actually, Charmaine's storyline in this first episode was so great. It was so cool to see her kind of go undercover and really...
Talk about Shafe's tiny genitalia.
Yeah.
Everyone's favourite bit, right?
True story.
Yeah.
Loud and proud.
I didn't know that. I just asked for a peek before.
Those scenes are all about the writers and
Well, Claire, how do you view kind of Charmaine's transformation this year? Has she found her new calling by doing this undercover work?
I think she just sees potential in herself, and she sees what others come to see, but she just has this confidence and this belief in herself and this fearlessness that I think was not a product of her time, and it was frowned upon, and she stuck to her guns, and she really was sometimes reckless. Throughout the season we see that, but I loved playing just such a strong, confident female character, and someone who believed in themselves in a time that just wasn't allowed.
Could she go too deep, though? Could she?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think we
Shafe can't go.
Yeah, for sure. There's a recklessness to her, I think, and yeah, nowhere to go from there. Yes, we'll see that this season because it's territory that hasn't been navigated before, and so we get to see her journey on that.
I mean, you guys were talking about kind of being a woman in this time in a male-dominated society. What stuck out to you, playing those scenes, especially in season 1 when you were in the precinct and with those guys, and what kind of stuck out to you
It
about?
made me really angry at men,
Really?
honestly. I would come home, like, and not make my husband a sandwich. I wouldn't. It was really interesting, and I understand that, you know, gender equality is still a huge issue today, but we've really come so far. That's what I learned.